Hizabude, hop on the beat!
Hirohiko Araki has had an over 40-year-long history with manga. His most well-known manga is without a doubt JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which has been running for more than 30 years with more to come in the future. However, many JoJo fans may not be aware of his other manga, rather it be JoJo spin-offs or completely original works. In this video, I'll be going over the history of Araki's other manga and recommending them along the way. Araki's first known manga is a one-shot story titled The Bottle. This story was written by Araki in 1977 when he was just 17 years old. It was submitted as a candidate for the Tezuka Award, becoming one of the finalists. However, since it did not win the award, the one-shot was never published. The only known image from the manga is a picture of a character in Old West attire. This would become somewhat of a theme in Araki's other works. In 1981, Araki wrote Poker Under Arms, a runner-up for the Tezuka Award and his first published manga. It's a short story about two Old West outlaws who end up in a poker duel. You can already see how this would later go on to influence fights like the one against Darby from Part 3 of JoJo. It's a fun story with a nice twist, so I think it's definitely worth checking out to see Araki's beginnings. His next story was also written in 1981, titled Say Hi to Virginia. Unlike anything Araki has done since, this is a science fiction story set in space. The story is about two men on a cargo ship who are attacked by an unknown person. This results in them having to defuse bombs around the ship. There's a lot of mystery involved in the story and it feels like it's building up to something. However, since it never received any more chapters, it unfortunately does end on a cliffhanger. While there isn't too much to see, it's definitely worth looking at for something radically different than what Araki is known for. His next was in 1982, yet another Wild West story called Outlaw Man. It's about a man being chased through the desert by bounty hunters. Not much really happens in this story, and it's mostly just showing the outlaw moving through the desert and getting in fights. I'd definitely say this is the least remarkable story in Araki's lineup. Next is Cool Shock BT, released in 1983. This is Araki's first ever weekly serialized manga. It's about a mysterious boy named BT who goes on short adventures with his friend named Koichi. BT's defining characteristic is his ability to do various tricks. This is something that Araki has said would go on to inspire the character of Joseph Joestar. However, a lot of what BT does is the kind of thing you'd find all throughout JoJo. Because of this, BT is something that'll feel familiar to a lot of JoJo fans and also stands out among Araki's other works. In October of 2021, Cool Shock BT also received a sequel one-shot titled Cool Shock Old BT, set 60 years after the original. It was written by Nisio Isin, well-known author of the Monogatari series of light novels. He has also previously written the JoJo novel Over Heaven, which focused on Dio. The art of the one-shot is done by Posuka Demizu, best known as the illustrator for the manga The Promised Neverland. While the story isn't written by Araki, it does include a huge number of references to both JoJo and non-JoJo Araki works. I plan on covering this manga soon in an upcoming video. In the meantime though, I definitely recommend the original BT story, since it stands out as one of Araki's most entertaining and lighthearted. Araki's next manga was Bao, published in Shonen Jump from 1984 to 1985. This is definitely Araki's most well-known story outside of JoJo. It is an action manga focused on a man named Ikuro, who can transform into the biological weapon known as Bao. Many of the abilities shown here are similar to those that would later be in JoJo. It's closer to the kind of manga JoJo would turn out to be, with more of a focus on a series of villains to fight. This is perhaps one of the goriest manga Araki has made, even rivaling some particularly gnarly moments in JoJo. The story received an OVA adaptation in 1989. This version has some great animation and tells the story quite well, with some omissions. I've gone over these changes in a previous video. The character Ikuro later made an appearance as a playable character in the fighting game JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle. I would definitely recommend Bao for any JoJo fan, since I think they'd feel the most at home reading it. The next manga, and the final one before JoJo, is Gorgeous Irene. It follows a girl named Irene Rapona, an assassin who has powers deriving from her use of makeup. Art style-wise, this is definitely the closest to JoJo among Araki's early works. Many characters might look familiar to anyone who has read JoJo before. The story only has 2 chapters, but it has some fun fights and characters. Unfortunately, the 2 chapters are pretty disconnected and it feels like there isn't much of a story. It's also notable for being the first Araki story with a female lead, something that wouldn't be repeated until part 6 of JoJo. I think it's still definitely worth reading since it features some very interesting designs and abilities. While JoJo has been the main focus of Araki's career ever since it began in 1986, he has still dipped into other small manga projects since then. In 1989, he wrote the first chapter of a series called The Lives of Eccentrics. These are short, heavily fictionalized stories that focus on interesting figures in history. While the first chapter was published in 1989, the next 5 chapters wouldn't start releasing until 2001. While Araki wrote the first 4 chapters, the art was done by Hirohisa Onikubo. He was an assistant to Araki during parts 2 and 3 of JoJo, usually drawing backgrounds. More recently, he has done work on the anime adaptations of parts 3, 4, and 5. The final 2 chapters are both written and illustrated by Araki himself. The people focused on are Nikola Tesla, Ty Cobb, the Collier brothers, Yoshio Ko, Sarah Winchester, and Mary Mallon, better known as Typhoid Mary. While all the chapters make for interesting stories, I find that the last 2 are the most worth reading, just because Araki's art was so great during that period. In 1995, Araki published a short story titled Under Execution Under Jailbreak. It follows a murderer who is given the death penalty and is placed into a room full of traps meant to kill him. It makes for a pretty interesting story and is another great showcase of Araki's art. Next is Dolce and His Master from 1996. It's about a man and his cat stuck in the ocean on a boat. The cat has to escape from his master who's trying to eat him. It's another great and well-drawn story like the previous. In 2015, a stage play adaptation of Under Execution Under Jailbreak was made. It also incorporates the story of Dolce and His Master. The lead character was played by Mirai Moriyama, who would later go on to appear in the Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan TV drama. This show was released on DVD and Blu-ray in 2016, but unfortunately there are no fan subtitles at this time. In 1997, the first chapter of Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan was released. This spin-off manga follows the Part 4 character Rohan, who has a series of encounters with supernatural beings. The first standalone chapter came out during Part 5, but more began releasing starting in 2008 and semi-frequently since then. This is definitely my favorite of Araki's other manga. The stories are all unique, the art is very good, and they also serve to flesh out the world of JoJo. A lot of interesting ideas are presented here, and I've spoken about how they connect to the main series in previous videos. As of 2018, 8 chapters have been released. All of them are definitely worth reading for any fan of JoJo. Starting in 2017, an OVA adaptation of the story was released. They first appeared as a bonus DVD to people who bought every Blu-ray of Part 4's anime. In December of 2019, 2 more episodes were released, and all 4 were released together in Blu-ray quality in March of 2020. All 4 are great adaptations of the chapters, with some minor changes. I've gone over these differences in a previous video. Starting in 2017, short stories based on Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan were released. These are all written by a variety of different authors. Some of the premises in these are definitely interesting. Unfortunately, only one of these stories has received a fan translation as of yet. Finally, in December of 2020, a live-action TV drama based on the series was released. The 3 episodes cover 2 of the stories from the manga and 1 from the light novels. These serve as great adaptations, with the lead actors all doing an amazing job. I've also gone over the differences between these and the manga in a video. In December of 2021, 3 more episodes are planned for release, although which chapters they'll be adapting is still unknown. In 1999, a short manga series titled Dead Man's Questions began publishing. It follows a wandering spirit who doesn't remember his previous life. He goes through a short series of adventures that shows how ghosts go about their daily life. At the end of the first chapter, it is revealed that the spirit is actually the ghost of Yoshikage Kira, the main antagonist of JoJo Part 4. Like Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan, I really love this story. Beyond the great premise and art, it also serves to flesh out a lot of ideas presented in parts 4 through 6. It's only 3 chapters long, so it makes for a quick and easy read. In 2002, a one-shot manga was released titled Oingo Boingo Brothers Adventure. Unfortunately, this is not an original story focused on the brothers, but just a standalone release of all of Tot's predictions seen in Part 3. However, it does feature one new thing, which is a short review of the manga written by Rohan. In 2010, a manga titled Rohan at the Louvre was released. This was originally created as a part of an event called The Louvre Invites the Comics, which featured art from comic artists around the world, including Araki himself. It actually received an official English translation in 2012, making it one of the only officially translated JoJo media before the hardcover releases that started in 2015. At the time, the only other translated manga was the Viz release of Part 3. This manga features gorgeous art and an original story focused on Rohan, much like the ones from his spin-off series. There are some doubts as to whether this manga is canon, since it conflicts with the time period when Rohan got his stand. However, that doesn't really matter to the story itself, and it is absolutely worth reading. I very much recommend getting the physical English version, which is pretty cheap on Amazon. In 2011, a one-shot manga was released titled Kishibe Rohan Meets Gucci. This is yet another short Rohan story, this time released as a part of Araki's Gucci collaboration. This is a really short story, but it still features some great art just like the Louvre one. It has been released in the same volumes as the main Rohan chapters, so it may or may not be considered part of the series. I do definitely still recommend reading it since it does have a couple of good moments. Finally, we have Jolyne Fly High with Gucci, released in 2012. This is another Gucci collaboration which tells a short, surreal story about Jolyne from Part 6. It also features characters from Part 5, such as Bruno, Abbacchio, and Pulpo. This story is definitely non-canon, since it mentions that Jolyne's mother has died, something that never happened in the original manga. She also crosses over with these Part 5 characters, which wouldn't normally be possible. So the story doesn't really have much to do with JoJo other than the character designs. It's just a short story made for fun with some great art. And that was every other manga published by Araki so far. The most recent of these has been the newest chapter of Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan from 2018. While we haven't seen anything new in a little while, I'm sure we'll get more original Araki projects once the newest part of JoJo begins. In the meantime, we seem to be getting a lot more non-Araki projects starting up. We have the sequel to Cool Shock BT, more Rohan short stories, a continuation of the Rohan TV drama, and finally a new manga that serves as a prequel to Part 4 featuring Josuke and Hull Horse. I'll definitely be covering these in upcoming videos, so stay tuned for those. For any fan of JoJo, I definitely recommend checking out Araki's other projects. These are a place where he can really flex his creative muscles, and they make for some of the most unique stories out there. Hopefully this video gave you a good idea of where to start. If you want to be updated on new videos or leave suggestions, join the Haman Beat Discord using the link in the description. To receive rewards like Discord perks and some uncut videos, you can support the channel on Patreon. And finally, for future videos, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to Tony, the Owl God, Alex Ramirez, Raziana, Doorbell, Cloudy, Monkman, Ashton Joseph Miller, Crayon, Jesper Jansen, Rigo Vids, Zucato, Shane Giger, Walter White, Whiskey, Taylor Choi, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, Gift G Stands, Bailey Smile, Stephen Pennington, Ali, Almighty Quarth, Jonathan Burr, and Oof.